Welcome to Ethically Speaking. I'm your host, Obira Anekwe. We started this podcast because of an interview I recently had with a high school student out of California. This student interviewed me for National History Day, and she had several questions, about 4 questions that I answered about a topic that is dear to my heart, the Willowbrook State School. Now, at Willowbrook, which was located in Staten Island, New York, they had an experiment. It was called the hepatitis experiment at Willowbrook. It occurred from 1956 until 1971. And during that time period, many of the students who lived at Willowbrook, they were highly disabled students physically and mentally, and most of them were African American and Latino students. They were exposed to hepatitis just because of the harsh living conditions at the facility. It was a boarding school for these students, and because of the living conditions that they were in, they were exposed to hepatitis. Now, rather than treating these students for this disease, the researchers wanted to see the effects of hepatitis and how they would react to hepatitis and how they could actually not treat them and as a way of, quote, treatment. But what happened in this study was horrific because these students were not informed of what was occurring. Their parents did not know that they were part of a study for a number of decades. It wasn't until Geraldo Rivera had an expose, a documentary about the students and their living conditions at Willowbrook, that the public really knew what was happening. So I wanted to address these 4 questions in a more informal manner. So the first thing I would like to just, informally just talk about is how did the study impact modern medicine? So one of the things that the study did is that it brought to light that people who participate in studies need to be fully informed of what is actually occurring in the study. What are they being a part of? So informed consent really, as a terminology, developed out of Willowbrook and also other studies like the Tuskegee syphilis study. But in particular with Willowbrook, because they were minors, adults or their guardians had to, should have been informed of the study, but they were not. So modern medicine now, we have to fully inform the patient or the human subject in the study. Another thing as a result of Willowbrook and how it impacted modern medicine is that many of the policies and laws and guidelines that we have to protect the physically and mentally disabled or challenged come as a result of Willowbrook because of what the public saw. So these policies are in place, disabilities acts are in place to actually protect the most vulnerable populations. Another question that the student asked was that how did the expose by Geraldo Rivera actually impact the study? It greatly impacted the study because, in my opinion, it actually helped to end the study. The study ended in 1971, but the actual school didn't close until nearly 1987. So it was a great impact because people visually saw how the students were living. Many of the students were malnourished. They had harsh living conditions. They were naked. They weren't properly clothed. So people saw that, and that affected actually the closing of the actual school. And also because of Robert F. Kennedy, he was the senator at the time in New York State, and he visited Willowbrook. And because of what he verbally said and the conditions, he described it as hell on earth. But when people actually saw the images of how the students lived because of Geraldo's expose, they thought it was a horror film, but it wasn't a film, it was reality. So it had a great impact. The third question the student asked me was about how and why is this study important to young people? It's important to young people because there were young people like themselves who were in the study. These were young children from ages, let's say, from 5 to 6 to teenagers and young adults. So seeing that impact of how history occurred in the United States, historically, this unethical study, if you don't understand the history and the background of why something happened, then it can easily repeat itself. Most likely, a type of study like Willowbrook wouldn't happen in the United States again because of the strict guidelines of human participation in research, but it's still important for young people to know their rights and what people can and should not, and can and cannot, or should not do to a human body. And lastly, how does this study, how is it different from modern studies that we have now? First of all, modern studies have to be approved by what we call an institutional review board, IRB. So IRB is an institutional review board where in every institution that has research or conducts research, you have to have it approved. And they have very strict guidelines of what you can and cannot do in a research study. Secondly, we talked about informed consent. The patient or the human participant must be fully informed in the study. But most importantly, and we must always remember this, is that the benefits to the participant in the study must always fully outweigh the risk. Okay, so the benefits always outweigh the risk in a study. So for the participant in the study, they must fully benefit from participating in the study. So those are just some of the questions that the student asked me, and I was very pleased to have this engagement to speak to the students in California. And we would highlight and talk about more unethical studies that happened in the past and just about bioethics and ethics in general on this podcast, Ethically Speaking. We'll continue to broadcast more topics. And if you want to learn more about bioethics and you want to learn more about the topic of bioethics from the basics to the more complex issues, you can join me for our course. I'm going to have a course in the summer of 2026, and it's entitled Learning Bioethics 101. You can reach me at my email address for the course at teachingbioethics2026@gmail.com. Again, teachingbioethics2026@gmail.com. And if you just want to know more about bioethics and this ethical issues, you can see our website at www.ethicallyspeaking.net. Again, www.ethicallyspeaking.net. So join us there online, or you can join us in our course. But next time we'll see you again with more of our featured talks about ethics and bioethics at ethicallyspeaking.net.